almost made it, but as he was going over the top, he was shot. But the body fell on the West Berlin side, but the person bled to death. And so there was the wreath and still the evidence of blood on the sidewalk. And that's an image I think I will never forget. And so many events like that I think many Berliners experienced, and that brought along, I think, a very unique camaraderie that maybe doesn't exist today anymore in Berlin. I'm not sure. A solidarity, and that's expressed itself sometimes when someone was killed and it was announced on the radio, that people spontaneously drove downtown, just drove around the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church area and just honked their horn. I mean, that was an expression of sharing in that experience of some sort, and that's clearly an eerie feeling of experiencing that. When the wall actually fell, I was a professor at Arizona State University, and I had an evening class, and the student in my class asked me what I think about the events in Berlin. I had no idea what was happening, and I gave some strange answer probably because I didn't understand why he would ask me about what's happening in Berlin. And then when I came home, my wife was glued to the television, and we watched until 3 or 4 in the morning the events and people dancing on the wall and so on. And that is a moment I thought I never experienced, would experience in my life. And yes, I admit that that evening I cried. I couldn't believe what I saw. But we also should be aware that since that wall fell, many other walls fell. And here I mean walls, figuratively speaking, in many countries, in many settings, in many societies. And the world has become a different, hopefully a better place. Before I turn it over to our next panelist, I also would like to mention I brought a few goodies along. Here's an actual piece of the wall, which you can take a look at. A little brochure about a memorial in Berlin. That the brochure lists the events of what happened to the wall since the building and so on. A picture of President Kennedy when he was in Berlin and made this famous statement, "Ich bin ein Berliner," and my collection wouldn't be complete, of course, without the Berlin Bear, the symbol of Berlin, even though it's a very tiny one. So, all right. Why do we? Let's then move on to our statements from our other panelists. And Herr Gottfried, would you like to go next?
Yes, sure.
Please.
Well, regarding November 9th, or well, the whole month of October or November of 1989, I almost have the same remembering as Stephen had before. At that time, it was more important for me if I could go to the movies at night with my girlfriend than what was going on in Eastern Germany. Looking back, it all went so fast. But at that time, in a way, it was a slow movement, and as I did not have immediate family on the other side of the border, it didn't touch me that much. This has changed a lot in between, and today, 20 years after that, even 10 years after that, I am, I think, much more touched by what happened there than at that very time. On Friday, I attended a meeting at Rice University, at the Baker Institute, where 6 persons met who have very detailed recollection of that night of November 9th. It was a meeting attended by 5 of the 6 foreign ministers of the so-called 2+4 countries of that time. exactly, this was the Honorable James Baker, former Secretary of State, then Roland Dumas, the French Foreign Minister, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, the West German Foreign Minister at that time, Markus Meckel, the later to become Foreign Minister of the GDR in 1990, plus via satellite Eduard Shevardnadze, the former Foreign Minister of the Soviet Union, and then, as Douglas heard from Great Britain could not attend, he had sent the then political advisor to Maggie Thatcher. So these 6 persons were sitting together, and for me it was a great experience to relive history, and at the same time knowing that, well, pretty sure these 6 people will not ever meet again in this framework, many of them in their 80s. So it was a great experience, and they shared their own experience of that period, of the situation with Germany being divided after the Second World War, divided into East and West. The West with what we call a Wirtschaftswunder, an economic miracle in the 1950s, fueled by the US Marshall Plan, and what I think by winning the World Soccer Championships in Switzerland in 1954, and in East Germany with political repression. So we had 2 systems, and it became pretty obvious from the outside that one of these 2 systems was not working properly. And this led to protests then, protests as the other speakers have already told us, that were growing and growing, but all the time non-violent. And the Soviet Union kind of watching this movement and not interfering militarily. No use of force, not only by people who protested, but also by the officials of the German Democratic Republic, and also no use of force by the former Soviet Union, which I think at that time was pretty remarkable. After, and I returned to Friday's event, after these 6 persons have shared their experience, we also had a kind of question and answer session. And we had a couple of these what-if questions. And one what-if question was, what if the Soviet Union had used force? Like they did before in '53 in Berlin, in '56 in Hungary, in '68 in Prague. What if? And this question was addressed to James Baker, and he said, well, no reaction from the US side. Then another question was addressed to Eduard Shevardnadze. What if there had been Soviet Union force and a US reaction to that? And now I quote, Shevardnadze's answer was, we would have bombed the whole of Western Europe into the Atlantic. This, at that time, drew a smile in the audience, like some people here. But rethinking it, I think this was not impossible. And I thought of myself, in 1989 and 90, I did my military service, just like 100 miles from the Eastern German border, and I'm pretty sure this would have definitely affected me. So what I was trying to make clear is the Soviet Union back in '89 and '90 definitely had a clear alternative to what they actually did. They did nothing. They just let it happen. But I think they had a clear alternative. And looking back, I think today it looks like, well, this must have happened. It was so clear. But I think at that time, German unity and this peaceful revolution was definitely not inevitable. There were alternatives to that. And today we're celebrating that. and I really